because it goes to the heart of the dispute that the chairman and the witness seem to be having, which is where would his testimony take place? The chairman is insisting that it be done in a closed-door deposition, whereas the witness is insisting to take up the chairman's original offer to do this in a public hearing. And one of the reasons that the witness continues to push for a public hearing is the Devon Archer closed-door transcribed interview. That is one of only 2 transcripts of, I believe, at least 18 transcribed interviews or depositions that this Republican majority has released. But it gives us really, really good insight into exactly what the chairman and the majority would plan to do with Hunter Biden's closed-door testimony. Let's take, for example, just I think earlier this weekend, Chairman Jordan of the Judiciary Committee, also a member of this committee, said on television that the most powerful evidence of President Biden's wrongdoing is the testimony of Devon Archer. So I wonder what is that testimony that is so powerful? Was it the testimony of Devon Archer when he said that President Biden was never involved in any of Hunter's business ventures? Or was it the testimony that President Biden never received any money from Hunter's business interest? And remember, Devon Archer testified he was Hunter Biden's primary business partner. He was on the board of Burisma with Hunter Biden. So he had firsthand knowledge of all of Hunter Biden's business deals. Now, maybe if it wasn't those, it was the fact that President Biden, according to Devon Archer, never received any bribes from the Ukrainian government. In fact, maybe it was even that he said that President Biden never discussed business with Hunter Biden or Hunter's business associates. It must be that he was focusing on the times when President Biden met or spoke to Hunter Biden's business associates. That clearly has to be what the chairman was talking about. So it must be that when you look at the transcript, what he was referring to is when Devon Archer repeatedly said that they never discussed business, that they only talked about, quote, niceties, including, and this is according to Devon Archer's testimony, how the weather was, and that none of the discussions ever related to business. So the best evidence that these Republicans want to put forward is testimony that completely absolves President Biden from any involvement, association, benefit from, or other interactions with Hunter Biden's business interests. Now, Chairman Comer, you were asked a few weeks ago on CNN what you thought the best evidence was of wrongdoing by President Biden, and you said that the allegations of the bribe from the Burisma founder, should we call it, I guess, the Burisma hoax now? Because unlike with Russia's interference in the 2016 election, which Special Counsel Mueller unequivocally determined was known to the Trump campaign, was welcomed by the Trump campaign, and was used by the Trump campaign, in this case, Vice President Biden's urging Ukraine to fire the Prosecutor General of Ukraine, which was consistent with official U.S. policy. It was consistent with the European Union policy. It was consistent with a bipartisan Senate delegation who urged it as well, was actually bad for Burisma, and therefore it was bad for Hunter Biden. And who should we look to determine whether that is the case? How about Devon Archer, the star witness, who was also on the board of Burisma? Nope. Devon Archer said that it was his understanding that Burisma had Shokin, the Prosecutor General, under control, and that getting rid of him would have been bad for Burisma. And of course it was bad for Burisma, because as soon as Shokin was gone, after he had allowed a British case to lapse, The next prosecutor general came in and did start investigating the founder of Burisma. So it turned out to be exactly correct. This is why Hunter Biden wants to testify in public, is because if you had not released that transcript and we had just relied on the false representations of the majority members of this committee about what Devon Archer said, we would never have known that Devon Archer actually absolves Joe Biden of any involvement of any wrongdoing related to Hunter Biden's business interests. And we would not know that this entire investigation, the public would not know that this entire investigation is a complete sham. And I yield back.
The minority will have 4 minutes. The majority has 10 minutes. I'll go first. I must oppose this amendment, but I have to state something. And I want everyone to understand this. A lot has been said about people on this committee running to the press during a deposition or during an interview. During the 2 main interviews of this impeachment inquiry investigation, the Devon Archer interview and the George Burgess interview, the very first person on this committee to run to the reporters was none other than Dan Goldman. That is a fact. Does anyone want to dispute that right now? The very
I would like you to identify one thing that I said that was not consistent with the transcript.
You're talking about you are talking about running to the press and leaking.
Release the Burgess transcript.
You said Hunter Biden didn't want to come because of leaks. You're the leaker. You are the leaker, Mr. Goldman.
You do your check.
You have 4 minutes remaining. This is my time. You're out of order. You're out of order. I let you sit there and regurgitate your baloney for 6 minutes. I oppose this amendment. This amendment strikes the entire section about why Hunter Biden's testimony is necessary for the committee's legitimate oversight investigation. The amendment discusses a single deposition with Devon Archer and gets rid of all other relevant information as to why his deposition is important. The amendment distorts the reality of how the committee has handled this investigation. Devon Archer has stated publicly that claims made by the Democrats in this amendment are categorically false. Specifically, Devon Archer stated that Democrats' claims that President Biden was not involved in Hunter's businesses in any way was false. Devon Archer said that's categorically false. He said Joe Biden, quote, was aware of Hunter's business. He met with Hunter's business partners. I recommend that all members of this committee oppose this misguided amendment, and I ask to submit to the record Devon Archer's interview where he says one Democratic claim about the Biden business is categorically false, and that was what I just mentioned with respect to Joe's involvement, knowledge in his businesses. Without objection, so ordered. Now the minority party has 4 minutes remaining. Chair recognizes Ms. Stansbury.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just very quickly want to clarify that when I mentioned that the majority had run to the press and misrepresented what happened in that interview yesterday, the point was that they misrepresented what happened in the interview. And I know that for a fact because somebody shared with me the text message that the Republican staff sent around all the members. And I also heard directly from the press what was said. So that's what we're talking about here is misrepresentation of the facts. And with that, I yield to the ranking member.
Thank you very much. And but I'm fascinated by this exchange because most committees I've been on, when the transcripts are released, it serves the vital function of transparency, but it also keeps people from misrepresenting and distorting the facts in advance. But if you withhold all but 2 transcribed interviews, I think there's something like 16 or 17 that haven't been released by the majority, then that does become an incentive to misrepresent and distort. I don't blame Mr. Goldman if he ran to the press to try to get out the true story before others go out and tell a lie about what's taking place if we're not going to turn the transcripts over. And I wonder whether you, Mr. Chairman, could commit to turn over all of the transcribed interviews
The
to
gentleman
everybody on
yield
the
for a
committee
question?
and to the Congress and to the people of the
The
United States
ranking
of
member
America. Yes,
yield
by all
for
means.
a question?
Yeah.
Does the ranking member presume that his Republican colleagues intend to lie about transcripts?
But
You seem to have that presumption.
no, well, what I will presume is based on the facts that there have been multiple distortions and misrepresentations in the past, and the vast majority of the transcribed interviews have not been released. Someone give me the exact numbers, but I believe only 2 transcribed interviews out of 17 or 18 have been released. I've never seen that before, and I'm baffled by it. I don't understand it.
In the ranking member's esteemed background and knowledge of judicial affairs, when there's ongoing investigations and multiple witnesses in complex cases, isn't it common for full transcripts to not be released?
No, it's not.
Within the parameters?
No, but I don't think so. But in any event, we're
investigation?
talking about some that took place 6 months ago, 8 months ago. But somebody's going to give me a list of how many we're talking about here. There's 17 total. Only 2 transcribed interviews have been released. So then it does become a race to get out to say, you know, what you think happened. Why don't we just give the people the transcribed interviews? We talk about transparency and accountability. That's the dominant theme of this committee. Isn't that something we can agree to?
Will the ranking member yield for 1 minute?
Yes, by all
I
means.
yield.
I have a question for the ranking member. If it is generally the practice of an investigator to withhold all of the transcripts during the investigative phase, would that normally also include releasing 2 of them?
Well, that strikes me as odd. That does look like, you know, the famed cherry picking. It's as if to say, well, 2 of these interviews helped us. 15 or 16 of them don't help us, so we're going to bury them someplace. So that's odd, but I want to presume the best of my colleagues, Mr. Higgins, and that's why I'm asking the chairman to explain what is the practice here.
Well, you complain that we don't release transcripts. You complain because we do release transcripts. Honestly, we released those 2 transcripts because you had misrepresented so much what Devin Archer said. That's probably one reason he went on Tucker Carlson's show to call you out for misrepresenting what he said in the transcribed interview. But
so you are able to get them ready. You are able to get them ready, in other words, and you thought that it was
we have other witnesses
important.
to interview. You know how it works, Mr. Raskins. You know, you're playing like you don't know how this works. You're playing and trying to act like you've never done an investigation before when you've led both impeachments in the January 6th.
I didn't lead the first impeachment, but
I wouldn't want to admit to leading that first impeachment either.
I would have 10 nicknames from President Trump by now if I'd led that one.
Well, you got, I think your all's time is pretty much expired. Does anyone on our side have anything to add? I don't see anything. So, who's that? Mr. Gosar.
Yeah, you know, we talk about facts. It wasn't U.S. policy to do what Biden did in Ukraine. The Obama administration actually said that Ukraine had complied with the law and that the loan should go through. Yes, they did. And that the vice president changed it on an audible over there. So the other thing I want to point out is if the president didn't know anything about Hunter Biden's businesses, how do you explain the 14, 15, 16, I can't remember now, how many times his partner actually went to the White House? How do you explain that? How do you explain this guy, Devin Archer, shows up at the White House? Who are you? Normally, the person's going to say, well, I'm Hunter Biden's business partner. That's typically what the average person would say. So how come you didn't know anything about that?
Mr. Gosar, for the 6 people in America who are still watching our hearing, could you just explicate what you think the presidential crime is?
Oh, I'm just saying right now, we're just talking about the facts. The facts here are misplayed. I mean, you complain about us, I'm going to complain about you because you're distorting the facts.
For 1 second?
I'll give you a second.
Mr. Gosar's time.
Just, I'm not going to ask you to take my representation for it. I would ask you to go read the transcripts of the State Department witnesses in the first impeachment who were in the Ukraine embassy and in the State Department and were the ones who created and made the official U.S. policy, who all testified that Vice President Biden was acting consistent with official U.S. policy.
Okay, well, that's not what we received. And when you start looking at this, You know, the courts, you know, I know the ranking member always goes to the courts. You know, you had a judge that basically said this honeypot of a deal for Hunter was no good. No one was going to get that. How do you explain the slow walking, you know, by the Justice Department on the IRS claims? And how many people get a chance to do that?
Well, with the gentleman yield, that's a great point. And when the courts ruled against Hunter Biden, I don't think you heard a single complaint from anybody on our side of the aisle. We said, let the justice system proceed. But when the court said that the January 6th committee was validly and constitutionally composed, we still have people today who violated their subpoenas who are whining about how the committee is illegal. I mean, come on. I mean, how do you feel about that one?
Could I ask you a question about that?
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, why did you all not hold them in contempt?
Hold who in contempt?
The people that didn't.
Oh, we didn't have time at that point. I mean, we got up to the very end of the Congress.
I was just wondering.
But if you want to work on it now, let's do it.
No.
I'm totally with you, Mr. Chairman.
No. I was just curious as to why you didn't. All right.
Well, let's make it bipartisan.
I'd like
Everybody
to
good?
that
We're
we
square?
hold anyone who's violated
No, I was just wondering. I mean, that's a tool that Congress has. If someone, you've been on TV several times saying that people should honor congressional subpoenas.
And I
And
believe
when they don't, you hold them in contempt.
whether it's Steve Bannon, Dan Scavino, Jim Jordan, or Hunter Biden, if somebody is...
But you did hold
If
the
somebody-
other two.
I'm sorry?
You did hold those two of those in contempt of
We
Congress.
did. Well, Steve Bannon's been convicted by a jury, by a court. He's been
The
convicted
Department
in
of
court.
Justice
And
went
still,
after
I don't
him.
think we
Oh.
could get a single person on your side of the aisle, other than Ms. Mace, to utter a word about people who violated subpoenas in the last Congress. I mean, that's extraordinary. And all that I've been saying about Hunter Biden is he accepted what was your original offer. You didn't like that offer anymore. You put out a different...
Let me say this, and then your time's expired,
Yeah.
and we're going to get to the vote. Hunter Biden is more than welcome to come for a hearing after the deposition.
Okay, you didn't say that before, but that's cool. You've changed the
Mr.
offer.
Chairman, hold on. Will you
Now,
guarantee
the time is
that
expired,
there will
Mr.
be a
Goldman.
public
You
hearing?
have talked and talked.
Will you
and
guarantee
talked.
that there will be a public hearing if he were to come in?
After the deposition, I
You
guarantee.
say right now
Yes.
you will have a public hearing
Yes.
with Hunter Biden.
Absolutely, we've said that. All right.
Yeah, I know. We heard a lot about public
Okay.
hearings that have
Very
not
good.
happened.
The question on the amendment